Welcome to the Cables to Clouds podcast. Cloud adoption is on the rise, and many network infrastructure professionals are being asked to adopt a hybrid approach. As individuals who have already started this journey, we would like to empower those professionals with the tools and the knowledge to bridge the gap.
Hello, and welcome back to your Cables to Clouds Fortnightly news episode. We're going to jump right into this one. There wasn't a whole lot of news compared to 2 weeks ago when we talked about all the acquisitions, but we do have a couple things to cover here for you today. So, Tim, why don't you go ahead and kick us off today?
Yeah, sure thing. And just to be clear, this news is not about Fortnite. This is just Fortnightly news. So it's very important we clear that.
Yeah,
clear that up. It's not about Fortnite
for now, right? We might start doing whatever season of Fortnite. We'll do our seasonal Fortnite news as well. But for now, okay. So yeah, so the first headline has to do with Frontier Communications, the service provider / cable provider, is now adding a new managed service to its portfolio, and it's going to be offering Nile. So Nile, the network as a service, as a managed service. So I'm kind of curious how that whole pass through is going to work. But for those who may not already know, Nile is it's a network as a service company, but it's made. What was it, like a year or two? I guess it's been a little over a year now since it was kind of all over the news as this kind of new offering. Network as a service means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Nile's take on it is probably closest to what you would actually assume when you say the words network as a service, where basically they're subscription based. So they own the hardware. They essentially install the hardware in your location, license you on a per user model, do all of the port security and all of that, and basically manage the network for you. So yeah, and it's all cloud. It's like the cloud based, being able to be elastic with your users and stuff. So it's really interesting stuff, actually. So Frontier is, I guess, going to be like a pass through partner for Nile, and just be able to add Frontier customers, or if you as a Frontier customer want to take advantage of a network as a service type of business opportunity, you don't have to go straight to Nile. You can go through Frontier, and then Frontier will go to Nile, I guess, and just kind of put their name on the bill for you. I'm not sure how this is going to work out yet.
A managed service for your managed service.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I saw it as well.
It's like Inception. How deep can we go on this one? But yeah. So what do you guys think about this?
It is kind of cool. Like the article reads kind of, this seems like it's going to be more aimed at business users, right? Like they provide business networking for people. So it's like an additional, hey, not only can we provide your internet, we can also provide like all your campus networking as well. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of other MSPs, ISPs, whatever you want to call them, that are going to jump on this train too. So I'm sure we'll see more of this.
Yeah, and like you said, Tim, like network as a service means a lot of things to a lot of different people. This, at least Niles, is probably the most straightforward interpretation of it. It's like we own all the gear, and we provide you a full-fledged network, and it's a fully automated service, right? So it's not surprising to see this one taking off. I'm kind of surprised it was Frontier. I don't know how big Frontier's footprint is at this point.
Yeah. And
also as an MSP in that regard as well. So I don't know if they're going to like front end some of the stuff for Nile as well. Like how that's actually going to work. But yeah, I guess maybe we should relate this to cloud as well, because Nile offers a lot of this through the cloud. Is that right? Not the most familiar with their product feature set.
Yeah. My understanding is like the dashboard that you interact with is all the management is kind of cloud based.
Yeah.
So kind of like that Meraki style, right? Like,
makes sense.
What's interesting about the Nile model is, like I said, it's probably closest to the most pure version of network as a service, where since they own the gear, if a switch breaks at 3 a.m., they come out and replace it, and like they, or they upgrade it, right? If it's time for a tech refresh, like they're actually going to come out and refresh your tech, so you keep all that off your budget seat. So that's a really interesting way to do it.
This is probably a great move for Nile as well, because they can not so much outsource, but they can have the Frontier techs doing a lot of the stuff, right? Because I mean, if you think about that, doing upgrades, scale out, replacements, right? Yeah, it's scale out of that the human infrastructure to actually replace a lot of this gear and perform the manual labor there. So it's good move for sure.
Yeah, I think we'll see a lot more of this with the MSP crowd. I mean, it's almost like a tongue and groove kind of fit, really. So pretty interesting stuff. And I think now we just need to wait and see how Frontier rolls it out and see how well adopted it becomes as a partner. I assume Nile is doing the same thing, trying to figure out, hey, is this our go to market for partners or something like that?
Yep, for sure. All right, Chris, you want to move us to the next one?
Sure. Next up we have, so on the 17th of Jan, we saw an announcement from Equinix that they were releasing something called the Equinix Fabric Cloud Router. So it's basically this service. And if you work probably in a Megaport centered shop, you probably got your arms back folded and like, oh, Equinix is finally coming to the table, because this is something that I think Megaport has offered for a while. But so on top of Equinix's Fabric, which is basically just a virtual fabric that they build that you can leverage as a service between all data centers that you host within Equinix. They've offered something called this Fabric Cloud Router, which focuses on basically the way they're leveraging this is cloud to cloud communications as well as hybrid cloud communications. So you have the option to deploy these Fabric Cloud Routers. You can connect them over the highly redundant backbone that they built across the fabric. It seems like a big portion of this is that cloud to cloud communication. So it could be, your multi-cloud environments, pushing traffic from AWS to Azure to Oracle, et cetera, right? So like I said, this is something that Megaport has had, I think, for a little while. Looks like they're getting good aggregation numbers. They're expecting to support up to 50 gigs pretty soon. And like I said, you have the fabric, how large Equinix's footprint is, right? And they have that fabric built between all those data centers. So, you could be connecting these remote data centers using this FCR, as we'll call it, across, multiple regions as well. There's also a point in here about AWS Outposts being used with this as well. So putting the gear on site at your location and then using the FCR on the back end, which is something I didn't necessarily think of, but I'm curious to see how people would be using that in the future. But I think this is a good move. It's probably them playing a bit of catch up, but also adding a lot of feature-rich things to their portfolio for Equinix. How do you guys feel about it?
So I don't know the Megaport side of it too well. I'll be honest. I've really always ignored Megaport, if I'm being honest. Not for any particular reason. It just wasn't relevant to what I was doing. But does Megaport have something like Equinix Fabric? I mean, they're basically, as my understanding is, Megaport basically is just a virtual overlay port type of setup anyway, right? So do they actually have a quote unquote fabric like the Equinix Fabric, or?
That is a good question. I can't remember if they have the option for the fabric to build across the data centers, but they definitely have, the local capabilities for building virtual circuits and things like that.
Yeah, that part I remember. And the reason I was bringing it up is because, Megaport's had a virtual router, but not necessarily backed by something like the Equinix Fabric, which put those two together. And actually, it's quite an interesting offering. That's.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I also don't know much about Megaport's solution, but the space just continues to get a bit more and more crowded. It seems like all the time, and it's interesting because so many companies are at like a different level, or like someone will have a feature that someone else doesn't have, and you can kind of like see where things are headed. So it's just another thing to watch, right, in the cloud networking space, as things evolve and features get added and you see each company's kind of unique take on what this means, on how to connect multi-clouds and on-prem and all the different stuff. So to me, it's something really to watch out for a lot. And like you said, Equinix has a pretty large base already, so we'll see.
Yeah, one thing I was looking for that I couldn't find was pricing on this, because I know, at least on the Megaport side, if you try to actually scale this thing out to the level of redundancy that you would have on prem, and you're paying for it it gets pretty pricey, right? So I imagine Equinix is probably going to be in that camp as well. Not to say it's not worth it for the capabilities you get and the built-in redundancy. You're offloading that cost of building the redundancy to Equinix, just like you do with your compute in the cloud, right?
Yeah,
so it's a similar model. So it very well could be worth it. But I'm curious to see the pricing on this. I probably just didn't Google hard enough, if I'm being honest with you. But I had a look and I couldn't see it. But we'll see where it goes.
Or it's hidden,
Yeah, I'm not sure I've seen it either, actually. I'm very curious because, obviously there's other cloud networking providers out there. I mean, hell, two of us work for one, just to address that elephant in the room. We've, Aviatrix has been partnering with Equinix for some period of time now, with the Aviatrix Edge fabric offering, in addition to the hardware offering. So I'm very curious to see what direction Equinix takes this, and also just like what their velocity is on this. Like today, it's a cloud router. How far are they looking to take this offering? Are they looking to build it in security stuff like, Aviatrix has, or do some of the application stuff, the application focused steering, like really the high level application level focused stuff, like kind of like Alkira and Proximo do as well. That's you just have,
or make it more managed. Right.
Or make it more managed.
Ways, yeah.
Everybody wants an easy button. Is Equinix going to go the route of like, actually, let's make this super easy and try to SaaSify the whole thing, which brings pros and cons as well. You can make it very easy, but then you can't change anything, right? It's the constant balance between pushing it away and bringing it in house, right? So yeah, I'm very, very interested to see not only what the offer looks like and the pricing especially, but also what is the velocity of feature development, or is this it? Is this the feature? Is this the offer?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I don't know how much Equinix, I mean, obviously I'm sure Equinix isn't going to turn down more market cap and things like that. But the thing is, Equinix, they do one thing very well. They do several things very well, but they do one thing really well, and that's the fundamentals of the infrastructure, right? It's that basic component. And I feel like, I don't know if they want to get into this, adding,
right,
this kind of added on capability to the actual data plane of traffic, right? Like we own, what's controlling the packets getting from point A to point B. I don't know if they really want to add that kind of, software
they want to move up the
shit
stack
on top of it.
Yeah.
Right? I feel like that's a whole can of worms that they could open. But I mean, not to say that they can't do it. They definitely have the capabilities at some point. But I just don't know. I feel like they need to stick to the basics. And I think this is a good way to do that.
And what they should do, and I'm not saying this because I work at Aviatrix, but really more like, just having been around the industry long enough to learn this lesson, which is, if you are very good at one thing and people buy a lot of that one thing that you do, it's usually better to try to partner with people who also have the same, do one thing really well, than to try to like overtake them and do that thing. Like unless the network, unless the cap is so high that you have, that you can take it and win it, it's usually not worth it.
Yeah. That's the thing though, is like you said, to hit that point home, this isn't at all to do with us working for Aviatrix, but like one thing I can say for sure is if there's one company that I hear very few complaints about that has as much wide adoption as they have, it's Equinix. You don't hear people complaining about what they do. Everything is very simple.
That's true.
It's like, there's no frills about it, right? It just works. So, I mean, this seems pretty par for the course for them. It's not, they're not reinventing the wheel. I think them just adding more of that core component that they address, right? So we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. The next one is pretty quick. So Google Cloud partners with Huggingface to attract AI developers. I know, what a name, right? I actually pulled up their site just because I'm not an AI expert in any mean, right? So just to see exactly what they call themselves. And it says, the platform where the machine learning community collaborates on models, data sets, and applications. So I guess my understanding is kind of like an open source, like, a place where all these things can be stored, where people can kind of host their all these things. Go ahead, Tim.
Well, first thing I think of is something like a GitHub type of
right.
type thing,
but for like data models and data sets and all that. Yeah. So I don't know. I think this is. I don't know that it's super significant because I assume everybody's going to either come out with their own marketplace, right, to compete directly against them, or
some of them already have.
They will partner with Huggingface, right? So, right, exactly. So, I think this is just another thing that we'll continue to see a bunch more of. You guys got any thoughts on it?
No, I think you pretty much covered this. This isn't that surprising. I feel like there's probably going to be more announcements very similar to this in the coming months. But it's pretty unsurprising.
The one thing I would add to this, and it's not even necessarily about the specific article, but it's kind of a dark horse type thing, is I'm waiting for. So on Twitter, there's multiple people who are all saying basically that a lot of enterprises are going to go build their own like AI stack because they have to for compliance reasons, and they have to for because they don't want their data getting out there. And I personally tend to disagree with this because I think it's absolutely insane the amount of stuff that's going to be required to build your own AI workloads. What I think we'll probably see, and it's not part, like I said, it's more like a tangent to this. What we'll probably see is the CSPs offering more walled garden type solutions
100%.
like this.
Yeah.
I agree with you completely, Tim. And I mean, the cloud exists because companies didn't want to manage a data center. I just don't see how they want to manage an AI center as well, right? Like that's just even more stuff. So
I mean, somebody will. Maybe the government will do it. I mean, if anybody would do it, the government would, right? Like the federal government would build something like that, right? They got that giant mountain in Utah. But for the most enterprises that even if they want to keep it or for compliance reasons and you keep that data separate, the CSPs would be stupid not to offer a walled garden version of this basically for them.
All right. Speaking of, I guess this is kind of related to walled gardens. Tim, you want to have the next one?
Speaking of walled gardens, or more like chain link fences, really. So this is really interesting. The Biden administration has basically said that they're launching a new federal, or trying to get new federal regulation launched to stop China from utilizing capacity, like compute capacity within America. So they're launching this know your customer type of regulation to keep China from basically being able to train and advance its AI technology using CSP resources like AWS or Google, OpenAI, Azure. And my first question is how? I want to know how they're going to make this happen. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think that I don't think that this was made with the idea of what it would actually take in mind. I think it was just to get something out there. Like, we should do this. Yeah. Get it in place, get the framework and the idea out there, and then kind of build the framework and how it'll actually work afterwards. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, it's typical government being out of touch with how technology actually works, right?
Absolutely.
They put the stamp on the paper, like, yeah, we should do this. Like, yes. China shouldn't be able to use our technology to build AI models. Like, well, all right, I guess this is like someone putting together a design at the top layer and handing the shit sandwich to someone down at the bottom. It's like, you guys figure this out, right?
You figure out how to make this happen. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, like I read this and I was like, all right, good luck. I'd like to see how you do it.
I mean, to be fair, I mean, So we, and some people don't know this. Some people in technology don't even know this, but we've had export regulations for things to China for a very long time. Like anybody who's worked at Cisco or with Cisco gear and tried to put anything in China is aware that, for example, you can't get HSEC licensing, like the high security, like high encryption licensing, stuff like that, right? Because they don't want China to be able to steal some of that encryption technology. How effective that's been, I don't know, right? But I'm just saying the actual idea has been there for quite a long time. And I understand that the idea is that, hey, we don't export these highly advanced, I don't know, chips, silicon, whatever, AI technology, whatever the hell it's looking like, or whatever, more like whatever they think it looks like, to China to let them build their own stuff. But I'm very confused on how they plan to stop the utilization of for lease, for rent compute.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, even the article even talks about the chips, like you said. And again, I do agree with the sentiment, right? Like it makes sense that they would want to restrict it, but yeah, the practical implications, like how do you actually do it? That's just, I don't know.
It's probably just one of those things based on like accountability and fear, right? Like if they can prove that you didn't make any kind of effort to stop this from happening, then they can sue you, type thing. So I imagine that's where the ball is rolling towards. But I don't know. Like you said, like we as people in technology know how much you can manipulate the system to try to do something and make it look like you're doing it from somewhere else, not inside China. It's not that hard. So
exactly.
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, so let's just see, I guess, how this one goes as well. I'm curious to see if any actual legislation comes out of this, and if it comes out of it, what the actual enforcement, what the actual teeth of the thing will be.
Yep, 100%. All right, last one before we wrap up. So this one is kind of timely, right, with the recent news about the acquisition of Isovalent by Cisco. So Bill Mulligan, he's like the community manager at Isovalent, he wrote an article called "The Future of Service Mesh is Networking." I think this is great, right? Because I always talk about this stuff, how I see it all combining and how there's not enough network engineers talking about this stuff. And Bill's not even a network engineer. So it's funny seeing all this coming from different angles. But it's a pretty long article. It's really good if you take the time to read through it. But to sum it up, there is a key takeaway right at the top, and I'm just going to read the last one. It's the future of service mesh is as a networking feature, not a product category.
Yeah.
And to me, that makes a lot of sense, right? Because at a high level, I'll just say that I was telling you guys this earlier. As network engineers, we work like layers 1 through 3 or 4, right? We don't really go up too much higher in the stack. And service mesh is kind of more about those upper layers, like layer 7 routing. So just combining that and doing a full stack networking, that's really the gist of what this article is about. And I definitely agree. So what do you guys think?
No, yeah, I agree with your sentiment there. One thing I really liked about the article is he kind of walks through the story of how networking got integrated into service mesh, or not necessarily integrated. Network, as we know, networking is in everything. But the story of how it evolved, right, and how things slowly moved from user space down to kernel space, and service mesh kind of took over that layer where eBPF is, right? So that was one thing that I thought was really informative to me. So if you're kind of not familiar with even eBPF's journey as a whole and into the service mesh world, I would recommend reading this just because it gives a nice overview of what problems were trying to be solved at certain layers, in certain user space versus kernel space. I found that very valuable. So pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's certainly past time that we're compressing the stack so that we can do this kind of networking and pay attention to all the layers. What has stopped us from doing this in the past, of course, is that anyone who's ever run a firewall knows if you turn on deep packet inspection, you tank the computing capacity, right? So I don't know if we just got around that with this, or if we're not worried about that, like, because, you know, we're dealing with much bigger capacity of compute. Like that's the one that as a network engineer, I scratch my head on a little bit, because I agree that this is awesome. It should have always been this way if it could have been. But I wonder how we've kind of got over the hump where it can be this way.
I think it's kind of gone the same way that QoS has, right? Like you hear much less about QoS in the days because because the pipes have gotten fatter, right? There's less concern about that. I mean, QoS is still important, but you know, you're not meticulously trying to schedule voice traffic over a T1 anymore, right?
That's true.
I imagine it's kind of the same thing, but
I will say that eBPF is magic and takes away a lot of the complexity. And you guys know this already, obviously, but for the audience, there's definitely some episodes coming up in the next few months that'll cover a lot of this stuff in so much bigger detail.
I mean, I'm going to ask these questions when it's time to ask these questions. That's because I know all the engineers, all those engineers are asking this question, right? You know what we want to know.
And thankfully, we will have the people on who can answer the questions. So we're very excited. Stay tuned.
All right. Well, that will wrap up our fortnightly news episode. And we will see you guys next week for a regular episode. Thanks for tuning in. Hi, everyone. It's Alex. And this has been the Cables to Clouds podcast. Thanks for tuning in today. If you enjoyed our show, please subscribe to us in your favorite podcatcher, as well as subscribe and turn on notifications for our YouTube channel to be notified of all of our new episodes. Follow us on socials at Cables2Clouds. You could also visit our website for all of the show notes at cables2clouds.com. Thanks again for listening, and see you next time.